What is going on, A to Z Sports? Sam Phelan here with you live for Titans at 2. Appreciate any of you guys hanging out and that we're waiting on me here. I'm pumped to be back. I got to tell you, I am pumped to be back and talking about a Titans head coach search and the candidates that are out there. A long list of 9 candidates that are so far on the Titans' radar that we know of that they will be interviewing and looking at to become their next head coach. I haven't had an opportunity to speak with any of you because right after Mike Vrabel got fired last week, I was, very active, putting out my articles, went to the press conference, and then I caught COVID and I was down horrendous throughout the entire weekend with COVID. And today I am finally back. I have recovered. So Hill wants to know, how am I doing? I'm fantastic because I am back feeling good and feeling like myself. But yeah, it was a tough couple of days. It sucked even more that so much was happening in Titans world, and I wasn't able to speak with you guys about my thoughts about one, the firing of Mike Vrabel, two, the candidates that are potentially coming down the pipeline, and just all of this chaos that has gone on. So I'm back. Hopefully, the Titans are going to be back, and the Titans are going to be making a hire pretty soon here. We do know some of the candidates, and today we're going to be going over the candidates who I feel the Titans must avoid. We know 9 names who they have requested interviews with. Now, there's a handful of them I feel like they need to avoid. One of them, I think, is going to surprise a lot of you guys. I think it's going to be a huge surprise, one name that I think they need to avoid. And then I'll tell you who my favorite candidate is of all of them. But let's first let me remind everybody that today's show is sponsored and powered by the Aura app. Anyone can find anything on the internet that includes your full name, your personal email, your home address, your phone number, and even your relatives. But Aura does the hard work and keeps you safe online for you. Aura found 30 data brokers that had my information online, removed my information from all of them, and immediately got me off of lists from robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and other people that just want to know more information about me. These data brokers expose your information, but Aura automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. They have a VPN, a password manager, and real-time credit and identity theft monitoring. So everything you need to be safe online with Aura. You can sign up right now. There is a link in the description of today's show. It's aura.com/ATOZ for a 2-week free trial. So I want to give some love to Aura. Here are the candidates that the Titans have already completed an interview with. These are the candidates: Mike McDonald, Mike Kafka, Antonio Pierce, and Brian Callahan. McDonald being the Titans defensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator, Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, and then Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator. And then these names are names that we know the Titans have requested to interview already, but they have not gone through the process of actually interviewing. And these are Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson with the Lions, Dan Quinn with the Cowboys, and then Bobby Slowick with the Texans and Brian Johnson with the Eagles. They haven't completed these interviews because all of these teams either played this weekend or are going to play, because the Eagles still have to play later today. But because of that, they were not able to complete these interviews this weekend, and those are to come later this week. These are, of course, just virtual interviews, though. All of these are virtual interviews to this point, and before they can make a hire, we know they at least need to do in-person interviews with a handful of some of these candidates. So it's interesting here. Maybe at least another week before we hear some real traction for who the Titans might hire. It all kind of depends on what the timeline is to getting these guys in person. We know they want to cast a wide net. We expect them to potentially take their time with this process. Part of the reason, as Amy Adams Strunk described after they fired Mike Vrabel, part of the reason it was a firing and not a trade of the Titans head coach was so that they were able to go ahead, get an early head start here. They are Like, if they were trying to trade Mike Vrabel, that wouldn't even be done yet. They would still be working through the process right now of trying to get that executed and negotiate with probably New England or one of these other teams that was looking for Mike Vrabel as the head coach. Although, who even knows with the Patriots, because Gerard Mayo apparently had a clause written into his contract that he was to be the successor of Bill Belichick, which was a crazy oversight by Boston media to not be aware of that and, you know, alert the public earlier. But part of the reason that they fired him when they did and didn't trade him is so that they were able to go and get a head start. They're doing that by casting a wide net right here. They're going, uh, they're going to go through this interview process, interview 9 to 10 candidates, make sure they get the right guy. And so, who do I feel like the Titans need to avoid? I will tell you straight up, I'll save my surprise candidate for later on in the show. So there's your little tease. I'm saving the surprise candidate. They straight up need to avoid anybody that's a defensive minded coach. That includes, if we go here, that's Antonio Pierce, that's Mike McDonald, that's Aaron Glenn, that's Dan Quinn. All four of those guys immediately to me avoid at all costs. And Mike McDonald, I think, would be my favorite of the defensive minded coaches that they're requesting to interview. I really like what Mike McDonald has done with that defense, but the Titans can't afford to go defense here. I know Amy Adams Strunk said, look, we're not necessarily focusing in on an offensive coach. We're looking for somebody who's got versatile experience and a diverse background and can offer new insight. They have to go offense here because the one thing that I think was a constant negative with Mike Vrabel was obviously the outdated offense. But number two is just the constant need to have a successful offensive coordinator and the cycle that goes on with coordinators in the National Football League. I liked Mike Vrabel a ton as a head coach. I do think it was a mistake to fire him, but there are also circumstances within the organization and the power structure of the organization that have since come out that show you this was never going to work with the current structure. I think Amy Adams Strunk messed up the structure of the organization going back to last offseason. And that ultimately led to Mike Vrabel no longer being the head coach. That's a completely different conversation. The point is, Mike Vrabel no longer being here does give the Titans an opportunity to kind of fail upwards, in my opinion, and replace him with an offensive-minded head coach who's able to modernize the offense, build around a quarterback in Will Levis, and give Titans fans what they have so long coveted and so long wanted. Mike Vrabel's issue that everybody who knows the Titans knows is that he always needed a good, competent offensive coordinator by his side for the Titans to be successful. It worked with Matt LaFleur. It worked with Arthur Smith. They had a lot of success with those two guys there, but what do we know? Both of those guys got poached and went and became head coaches elsewhere because they did well as an offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Todd Downing didn't work. The Titans didn't work. Tim Kelly maybe could have worked with better personnel around him, but didn't work in the 1 year that he was given. I think he can be a good offensive coordinator. I think the Titans personnel this year really lacked and didn't support Tim Kelly. But either way, even if next year the Titans had Tim Kelly as their offensive coordinator and they shined and they blossomed and Will Levis turned into a stud, Tim Kelly was going to go get a head coach job somewhere. So the constant need to replace your offensive coordinator as a defensive head coach is very difficult to do. The argument for defensive coaches is always the Harbaughs, the Belichicks, the Tomlins, the guys around the league with defensive backgrounds that are successful. But it is very hard to time after time after time get the head or get the coordinator right. And Mike Vrabel specifically is a coach who only really preferred coordinators that he had history with, that he had a background with. And when you do that, You are picking from a very narrow pool. Mike Vrabel was always looking at his coaching hires from a very narrow pool of coaches who he had worked with before. So it didn't work all the time. And therefore, he's no longer the head coach of the Titans. So the Titans have to avoid defense. You are not getting rid of Mike Vrabel to replace him with a less proven version of Mike Vrabel. And that is exactly what you're getting in Aaron Glenn, in Dan Quinn, in Mike McDonald, in Antonio Pierce, is Mike Vrabel style guys that are also not necessarily as proven as Mike Vrabel. And so you have to go offense. That is step one. I see some comments here. Marco says, can you tell us why you had so much faith and interest in Mike Vrabel? And yeah, I haven't really gotten to talk about the Mike Vrabel firing all that much because I got sick right as you know, we were supposed to have some morning shows reacting to the news, and I got sick and went down before I was able to do it. But I guess to kind of summarize it quickly, I believe Mike Vrabel is a proven leader and a proven head coach who can win and is going to win. And I believe when Mike Vrabel gets another job somewhere in the National Football League, he's going to win and have a ton of success and win playoff games. The culture that he instilled in the Titans locker room was very rare for NFL head coaches. It's super easy to have fun when you're winning. But I spoke to Titans players all throughout the season in the locker room and even after the season in the locker room who just went 6-11, who just had a very brutal season and said, I had fun start to finish playing for Mike Vrabel. People showed up and wanted to play for him all the time. I believe that given another offseason with resources to fix some of the roster issues, given the control that Mike Vrabel wanted to have, that the Titans were going to turn into a winner. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think the idea, like, I think the grass is very much more often than not greener when it comes to head coaches in this particular instance. You see so many teams around the National Football League that continue to go through this every 4-year cycle of looking for that next head coach, and they cannot really get it right. But when you find a guy like Mike Vrabel who has proven that he can win and who can establish culture, I think you need to be willing to ride it through the lows in order to get those high highs. Does that mean the Titans cannot be better off for this? No, I think there is a very real possibility that they hire a good head coach and they can be better off for this. But do I think that's a guarantee? Absolutely not. And I would definitely bet on Mike Vrabel winning elsewhere. So, I mean, that's my take on it at the end of the day. And I think it goes back to how Amy Adams Strunk handled last season. I don't necessarily understand firing John Robinson last season, but then not firing Mike Vrabel because then you started to build around Mike Vrabel's vision. That's why you brought in Ran Carthon, was to collaborate with Mike Vrabel. I asked Ran Carthon that during his press conference last week and said, Ran, when you and Mike were operating this past offseason, were you operating on a multi-year vision? And he said, yeah, like the plan was a multi-year, multi-step plan of how to build a winner. And Ran and Mike, according to Ran Carthon, were working pretty well together at doing that. Amy sees one season, this season, I guess 2 seasons now in a row, not go up to her standard, and she pulls the plug on Vrabel to build around Carthon, but it's a pretty quick shift. I don't believe in pointing Ran Carthon versus Mike Vrabel. I think they're both very good at their jobs and can be very good at their jobs. I think it would have been better to give them another offseason of working together. Of course, you don't know what Vrabel's demands were behind the scenes, what type of control he wanted versus how he felt about Ran. All of that can muddy the situation. I just think if you were going to fire him after one season of not, if the 2023 season not being a winning season was the thing that would have made you fire Mike Vrabel, they should have fired him back when they fired John Robinson. And they should have hired Ran Carthon and let Ran hire a coach back then that they are now working together for a vision that they can see through instead of letting Ran and Vrabel work together for one off season and then not being able to see that vision through because the owner yanks the head coach. It was not Ran Carthon's decision to fire the head coach. So I think Amy got the timeline wrong with this. And I think that this is why, and as MB says, yeah, until you know what the demands were, it's hard to say whether Carthon and Vrabel could coexist. And because of that, I have to take Carthon's word for it, which is that the two worked well together. But that's, of course, from Ran Carthon's point of view, not from Mike Vrabel's point of view and from what Mike Vrabel uh, wanted. And so we'll see. Jay thinks the Cowboys roster wins with Vrabel as the head coach. I think so too. I think if they hire him, they will be very happy with what they get, and we'll see. But the time for talking about Mike Vrabel, as much as I could keep talking about this and want to, and I'm slightly upset that I didn't get my opportunity to talk about this, the time of talking about Mike Vrabel has passed because we are now looking at a new Titans head coach, whoever that might be, and a new Titans coaching staff. So as Laurent says here, hey, move on. That's what we're doing. We're moving on. We're looking forward. Who's the new head coach? Who's the new coaching staff? That's the question now. Avoid all defensive guys. There's one other guy I would avoid if I was the Titans that will surprise some people. I'll tell you guys who that is, but I want to remind everybody first that the show is powered by NFL Flag Football and Titans Flag Football. It's a league for boys and girls pre-K through fifth grade. The Youth Titans NFL Flag Football Leagues are in and around Nashville. Once a week program on Sundays, a total of 2 hours. Registration closes on February 18th, so you have about a month now to get registered. The season starts in March and goes through May. So spring football for your pre-K through fifth grader, boys and girls, in and around the Nashville area. The link is in the website, or the link is in the bio here. It's in the description of the show. It's www.titansflagfootball.com. They are powering today's show. So is SNHU, that's Southern New Hampshire University. Here at A to Z Sports, we're driven by a passion of sports and continuing to build our careers. I get asked all the time how I got started in sports or what it's like to work in sports. And at Southern New Hampshire University, with their online sports management program, you can turn your passion for sports into a degree and into a career. That could be a career as an athletic director, a sports information director, a marketing manager, or other exciting roles. They have courses taught by faculty with real-world experience and graduates working in the industry for instant connections. That's the best way to get involved in sports, is instant connections. They're accredited. They are radically affordable in tuition and nonprofit. So go to snhu.com/A to Z. The link for SNHU is in the description as well. Let's get to the candidate who I think, who's my favorite candidate. That's coming up. Who's the candidate that's a surprise that I think the Titans should avoid? One of the guys is right on here. It's Mike Kafka. This might not be a surprise to people. I just think, do you really look at that Giants offense and think, oh yeah, let me get that guy. Let me get the guy behind the Giants offense. That feels like a weird interview to me. That feels like, well, we'll see what he has to say. I would be shocked if he was like a serious contender to get this job. So I'm out on Mike Kafka. The surprise is on this list. And I would avoid Bobby Slowick if I was the Tennessee Titans. I would avoid Houston Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. I know he is a super popular name right now on social media, among football fans online and Titans fans who are sitting here just clamoring at the idea of Bobby Slowick. He's somebody who I would avoid. He doesn't have a ton of experience coaching offense. He's really only been coaching offense for like 4 or 5 years. Based off of what I've heard from around the league, as well, based on what I've heard from some colleagues, the league is pretty bearish on Bobby Slowick as a head coach. He might not have the temperament and the makeup to be a head coach. And there are a lot of people around the NFL who do not believe he will have a ton of success right now. He needs some more time. That seems to be what I hear pretty consistently across the board. It's easy for people to kind of just like look, oh, well, he's had success this year with the Texans, so therefore he must be a good head coach. I think there's a lot that goes into this, and having CJ Stroud, sure, yeah, he has done a good job with CJ Stroud. Um, he has experience on both offense and defense, as Cervuco says here. That is absolutely true. He has coached both sides of the ball. But I usually like to listen to what other people from around the league are saying. These are people that know the ins and outs of all of these coaches. And Bobby Slowick is a guy who I think is getting a lot more traction on social media than he actually is in league circles. So he is one that I would be afraid of here, um, if I were the Titans looking for the next head coach. I'd look for an offensive guy with a little bit more experience and somebody who I think is a good example. This is a guy who I like, but is not my top guy. Would be on this list as well as Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, a decent example, similar to Slowick actually, of somebody who was getting a lot of attention last season and said, I'm not sure I'm ready. I kind of want to stay another year, was comfortable with the Lions, got another year of experience, has gotten even better this season. And so Ben Johnson, a name that I would absolutely be a fan of. And then my number one guy is that guy you see on the bottom right of your screen there, and it's Brian Callahan, a guy who has years and years of experience now as an offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's my top choice, but I think Callahan and Johnson, Ben Johnson, not Brian Johnson, Ben Johnson, uh, I think those are the two guys that I'd be looking at if I was the Titans. I think there's an offensive coordinator I have in mind too that would be very good for young Will Levis. I'll have an article about that on A to Z Sports.com. But avoid anybody that has to do with defense. Avoid Mike Kafka for obvious reasons, and avoid Bobby Slowick. And here's the other thing. Titans fans, you hate the run, pass. Bobby Slowick does a lot of first down running and a lot of run, pass. Of course, situations are different, but that has kind of been his bread and butter with the Texans so far. They love to go run, pass. They did it the second most in the league this year. As far as combinations of play calling. Surprisingly, you think of the Texans, you're like, oh, air raid, they throw the ball. They did run, pass, the second most frequent of anybody else. Of course, it's worked. They've had their success, but there's obviously so much more to being a head coach than just being a play caller. Like being a play caller obviously is a priority for the Titans if you're looking at building your next offense. And Bobby Slowick has shown so far that he can have success as a play caller. But I think you need to do more as a head coach. I'm not sure he's ready to take that step yet. People around the league aren't sure he's ready to do that either. So we'll be interesting in seeing if Bobby Slowick is somebody who gets a job or somebody that social media just likes to talk about a lot. But Brian Callahan, Ben Johnson, two very, very, very good candidates here that I think Titans fans need to be pumped up about if they end up being the next coach of the Titans. I'll have more on this. It's kind of a lot of nuances and a lot of details to get into on a live show here, but I'm going to have an article coming out later today, number one, about a dream offensive coordinator that I think the Titans could hire. The perfect offensive coordinator that I think they could hire. And then I'm going to have all 9 of those candidates that you see here. This guy, these 4, these 5, all 9 of them ranked as my top choices to my 9th favorite choice and reasons why. So if you're looking for more detail about Brian Callahan, Ben Johnson, why I'm so high on those guys, or why I'm lower on certain guys like Mike Kafka and whatnot. That will be in that article as well. So keep an eye on it on A to Z Sports.com. Going to have another busy week of content as the Titans coaching search continues. A to Z Sports Morning Show and A to Z Sports.com for written articles. That's all we got time for today for Titans at 2. Appreciate you guys. Patrick wants to know the OC now. It's not the time for that now, Patrick. We got a whole off season to talk about. So that it's coming up. You might be able to see it in an article form. And we'll do a show on it here in the near future, but it's not time for that just yet, Patrick. It's a name you might not have thought of, though. I'll give you that much. You guys have a good couple of days, as Ronnie likes to say. Have a great day today. Thanks for hanging out with me in my return back from COVID, back and better than ever. I'll talk to you guys later. Till next time, tighten up. We'll see you.